All right, Luke, you're gonna have to listen to me talk for a little bit. Hosting this webinar, and there's no. Hey,
Hello, Tyler.
we're still in a practice session, so not quite live yet.
Got it. It says
Ready to
there's
go.
it says there's 13 attendees in the waiting room.
They're all in the waiting room. Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
got it,
You
got
can
it, got
just
it.
click start.
So we'll,
Yeah.
we'll wait for us all and then introduce.
No, I think we should probably join and kick off.
Okay, let's do it.
Do it. All
Hmm?
right.
Welcome, everyone. Seeing a few familiar names.
We love to see it. Hope everybody had a nice weekend. We'll give folks just a couple minutes to gather and get started about try 403 today. I hope everybody had a restful weekend and it wasn't too glued to the news. We have all the updates for you today.
Mhm.
Couple comments already. By the end of these, we're going to be a family. They're excited to know what you're snacking on
Oh,
too, Prince.
I am eating a one of our here. I'll do a free advertisement for one of our customers.
Perfect.
One of our flagship customers is Magic Spoon, the high protein cereal company. Better for you alternative to Cheerios and Fruit Loops and those cereals that we used to love as kids. They make adult versions of all of these, and they recently came out with a line of protein bars, and they have a s'mores protein bar with 11 grams of protein, 2 grams of sugar, and 3 grams of carbs. So this has become my go-to replenishment snack for fuel throughout the day.
All right. We're advancing by the day on the pod. Now we start with ads.
We have ads now, exactly. We have ads
Right,
now.
right. If anybody wants to apply to be a founding partner for the podcast, just drop me a DM.
Awesome.
Okay. I think Saul will be here in
Yep.
just a minute.
I'll just shot him a note.
Perfect.
We have a special guest for you folks, and thanks to everyone who showed up on Friday for maybe just a quick poll or just like a drop a quick answer in the Q&A, folks. For those who came on Friday, our session with Graham, who's a licensed customs broker, was that helpful? Was that not helpful? Would you guys like to see more commentary from folks who are specifically in the customs space? What would you love to see more of over the next week? Drop it in the chat. Friday was the best one
Great.
yet. Oh, wonderful.
Awesome,
Wonderful.
Rachel.
Anyone else?
Rachel, I know we owe you an answer on a business question about a shipment that you have coming in. As the support team, I'll make sure they follow up with you on that one. Okay.
All right. Shall we kick things off?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I think Saul will be here in just a minute, but he won't mind us getting started. So, hey everybody, welcome to today's edition of Let's Talk Tariffs. I'm Tyler, brand and customer experience lead here at Pietra. Thanks for joining us. This is now our sixth consecutive business day of daily trade and tariff briefings. This started as a one-time session for those of you who are new to this webinar, and we've had such strong engagement throughout the series that we're going to continue providing daily updates for the near future. Just one signal among many showing us how urgently brands are trying to understand what these evolving trade policies actually mean for their businesses. And welcome, Saul. Happy to have you. And I'll put a quick plug in. So all of last week's recordings are now posted to our help center. So anybody who wants to access those, just visit help.pietrastudio.com. They should be pretty easily searchable. We also are posting all of these on LinkedIn, and these are broadcast live on LinkedIn. So if you don't have Pietra added on your LinkedIn network, go ahead and do that. That can be an easy way to keep tabs on all of the live updates that we'll be sharing. So we went ahead and got started. Happy to have you today. I'll properly introduce you to the group in just a minute. We have a handful of new folks and then some repeat visitors as well who have been really enjoying these sessions. So happy to have you here today, man.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro and look forward to digging in here. Nice to meet everyone.
So before I hand it off to you two today, I'll just do a quick overview of Pietra. If you are new to Pietra, this is your first time attending one of our webinars. So Pietra, a modern infrastructure platform for global e-commerce. What does that mean? It means we work with brands to support everything from sourcing to manufacturing to fulfillment, compliance, customer experience, the whole package. And we also view our role and part of our responsibility, especially in times like these, is to make sure our customers and partners are feeling informed, prepared, and strategically aligned to navigating every shift that's happening. So that was really the genesis of this webinar series. And just really want to thank everybody who's been so engaged and showing up multiple times a week with your time and learning along with us. So it's great. Well, with that, I'm going to introduce special guest today and my colleague here at Pietra, Saul Javed, our CFO. And Saul's going to lead us through a conversation of direct financial impact and support with decision-making based on the impact of tariffs. And prior to Pietra, Saul's had a really robust background. He led strategic finance teams at Cloud Kitchens and Reshop. He kind of cut his teeth in the investment banking sector at Allen & Co. So again, he'll be walking us through how brands should be thinking about the financial implications of the new tariff regime, how to structure cost models, supplier negotiations, et cetera.
Cool. Awesome. Tyler, shall we kick things off and want to share your screen and we can start presenting some of the slides?
Yes, perfect.
All right. Well, thank you folks all for tuning in. Thank you again to everyone who tuned in on Friday. Really cool to see the comments about it being helpful and informative. We're actually going to continue to double down on this trend of bringing in a few guests, friends of the pod, if you will, who can comment on different parts of the commerce stack. So last week on Friday, we had Graham Anderson, who's the founder of Importal. Graham was a licensed customs broker, so was able to give some very specific and acute advice to brands about classifications and import. Today, as Tyler mentioned, we have our colleague Saul Javed on the call. Saul, maybe want to pass what Tyler said, give just a 5-second background on yourself, introduce yourself, and then we can dive in.
Sure thing. Nice to meet everyone. Hi, I'm
Cool.
Saul, CFO here at Pietra. Been here for just under a year, and really a crazy turn of events that we've all seen and experienced in the world of trade and supply chain and commerce over the last couple of weeks and months. And so, there's a lot of questions we're getting, and even we ask ourselves about the ecosystem. how, financials, P&Ls, payback periods, customer acquisition costs, everything about how to run your business financially and operationally is up for grabs and uh, up to question. And so really wanting to hopefully help shed some light as to what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and hopefully illuminate some ways to combat these tariffs and save the bottom line.
Amazing. Alrighty.
Great.
Let's dive in. And folks, please again pile onto the Q&A. This is your chance to ask questions about, look, how does this impact the bottom line of my business? How should I be thinking about decisions around purchasing inventory, about cash conversion cycles, about modeling some of this going into effect, really anything that touches the financial or operational impacts of your business, Saul can opine on. So please do not be shy and drop in questions where you can. Cool.
All
Let's
right.
go to next slide, Tyler. Thank you. Cool, everyone. So just to recap, folks, as a reminder, what is happening right now is a increase in import tariffs from countries across the world into the US. So just as a refresher for everyone across the world, what is a tariff? A tariff is an import tax applied to products, goods, inventory that are entering a country. A common question we've been getting throughout last week, this week, is who pays for tariffs? And as we talked about in depth with Graham on Friday, the answer to who pays really, really depends based on who is the importer of record. So what are the Incoterms or the commercial agreement terms you have set up between you and your factory? We can go through some of those Incoterms again, and we can, help folks understand, hey, do I pay for my tariffs when I buy the goods from my factories? Do I pay them after they're delivered? Do I pay for them when I receive the products? When does that happen? And then the third thing just to remember is duties and tariffs are based on product classifications. So what product is your what classification is your product dropped into? HTS codes, which stands for Harmonized Tariff Schedules, are the global economy and supply chain's way of understanding what products are being imported into which countries. So make sure that you have a really good customs broker. Again, we can introduce you to many who can help you classify your products accordingly. Tariffs and duties are based on which country you're exporting for and then importing into, and then ultimately what is the value of those goods. And we'll wrap this slide up with the disclaimer that Tyler and I always give, which is nothing you're hearing on today's call should be taken as legal or financial advice. We are here to help. A licensed customs broker like Graham on Friday is the only person who is actually able to provide legal and financial advice here. So speak to a licensed customs broker, reach out to us, and we can help connect you with one. But that's just the 101 primer for what we have today. Cool. Tyler, then next slide.
Thanks, Prince. And just to recap a question we got a couple times last week and over the weekend, especially from folks who attended Graham's session. Do you want to talk a little bit about the best way to reach out to a licensed broker, maybe within the Pietra ecosystem and even outside of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we at Pietra actually have a freight forwarder and licensed customs broker under the hood called Speedmark. And if anyone was on, I believe it was Wednesday's episode last week, we actually had Speedmark's team on the podcast or on the webinar. So we at Pietra have a licensed customs broker on. You can go through Speedmark and use them. We also have a few other ones that we are actively onboarding onto the platform. So if you go and log into Pietra on your Creator Hub, you should see an ability to, under the fulfillment tab, to match with a licensed customs broker. And then they should be able to help you actually classify your goods and then help you throughout the entire import process. Awesome. Cool, folks. And then just quickly going through this. So with a daily update, I think there was a question in the Q&A of what, if anything, has changed on the tariffs since last Friday. So as we've been tracking every day here, folks, here's a daily summary or analysis of what is the latest and greatest in and around the tariff world. So just going down the list, the big kind of notable pieces from Friday is, so sorry, we finished up Friday with the US having about 125% stacked tariff. So again, that's the baseline tariff plus the reciprocal stacked tariffs on top for Chinese imported goods. There was still a 90-day pause on tariffs for goods coming in from other countries apart from China across the world. Between Friday afternoon and into the weekend, two major things happened. The first is US tariffs on Chinese goods reached 145%. So those stacked tariffs have been continuing to increase. China, in return, has been retaliating with increased import tariffs of their own on American-made products. But the big notable piece that I'm sure a lot of folks saw over the weekend was the Trump administration granted a temporary exclusion on consumer electronics, so products that are classified under categories like laptops and headphones and computers and iPhones, most notably, received a temporary tariff exclusion. The news that we are hearing in and around the ecosystem is that this is set to be about a 30 or so day hiatus. So Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who's been the spokesperson on behalf of the administration for a lot of this, mentioned that it would be reinstated in about 30 days. So if anyone here on the call is importing Chinese goods that are under the electronic subcategory, I would move to import those sooner than later, because these things will most likely change. And then apart from that, de minimis, which we've discussed multiple times, which is looking to be eliminated starting May 2nd, so in about 17 days from now, is continued to be set on being eliminated for China and Hong Kong to begin with, and then for other countries on top of that. So this is the latest and greatest, folks. Please do drop any questions in, or Tyler, any questions about what's new in the news between Friday and today?
No, just a general question of if anything's changed since Friday. And there are some questions about, decisions around timing. We have some shipments coming in from China, for example, and wondering what we would recommend to do with these. Any recommendations beyond contacting a licensed customs broker for this?
Yeah, folks. The answer ultimately depends on what does your business look like, and Saul will get into this, right? So if you have the gross margins to play around with, and if you folks have cash on your balance sheet, one thing I will say is containers are actually at their all-time low prices right now. So if you are a importer that is looking to ship via container, you can get pretty good rates on the ocean spot market for containers. But apart from that, as is our continued recommendation, like do not make rash decisions on suddenly looking to reshore large parts of your supply chain. Explore your options, see what's possible, and understand whether or not your business can survive or can eat an increased amount of gross margin. Awesome. Tyler, any other questions we wanna jump into?
Um, what are some examples of de minimis?
Great
So
question.
maybe,
Awesome. So yeah,
yeah,
and we have a slide for that. So I believe it was Dulce that asked the question. So Dulce, if we've been going through this over the last week or so, but just as a reminder for everyone, de minimis is the phrase or colloquial term that is used to describe the import duty exemption that has historically been applicable to goods and products imported into the US that were under $800. So again, if you historically were a drop shipper and e-commerce merchant importing a single parcel or small shipment of goods into the US, and that order was valued at less than $800, you historically did not need to pay an import duty or tax on that product. And this is what was described as de minimis. That is no longer going to be in effect starting from May 2nd. So the Trump administration announced on Liberation Day that starting May 2nd, there would be import duties and taxes that would be subject to all products coming in, even under that $800 value, starting with these products that are coming in from China and from Hong Kong, and then quickly rolling out to inventory and products from across the rest of the world. Awesome. Alrighty, Tyler, shall we dive into a bit of Saul's presentation, and then we can group together the rest of Q&A from there?
I think that's perfect. Yes.
Let's do it. Alrighty, folks. So without further ado, we will turn this over to Saul, who has a couple of slides presented, and then keep asking questions, and Tyler and I will facilitate some Q&A with Saul.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So yeah, I think before we jump in, I think it's best and important for us all to just take a deep breath, right? We need to accept and understand that this is the way of the world today, and that way may change tomorrow. It may revert back to how it has been in years past. It may completely change into a new direction, next week or in a month from now, right? So all you can do sitting in our collective chairs is to just receive the information and make the most informed decision about how to get your business from where you are today to tomorrow, to the day after, next week, et cetera, right? I think of looking back at businesses in the face of the COVID shutdown, where all kind of retail businesses or businesses that benefited from people being out and about, not inside their houses, were met with a ton of uncertainty as well. And so you do have these kind of once in a decade, maybe even more instances and kind of global events that we all need to kind of react to. And running a business, that obviously means you have to have reactions to how to run your business and make sure that you're continuing to make money and growing. And so that's kind of where we're going to dive into, is just a pretty easy, simple illustration of what a P&L for a typical, $1 million brand looks like. Before the tariffs, what happens from the tariffs, what is the post-tariff P&L typically or expected to look like, and then subsequently, what can we all do together, and what can we all take action on to counter or combat those tariff impacts to the P&L, and then what does the ultimate end state look like on the other side of these both tariffs and actions that we can take. So on this page, kicking off with just from the administration's website, we're seeing on average, on a kind of import weighted average across all the different countries, around 41% tariff, reciprocal tariff on an incoming goods. So, whether it's China, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's Brazil, you average across the number of shipments coming in across all those countries, blended average is around 41%. So that's kind of the number we'll just illustrate and walk through in the following pages. And obviously, that is a pretty serious dollar amount. So want to make sure we're addressing all of the questions you guys have about the P&L impact here. So if you go to the next page, please. Again, just reminding everyone of what these 41% average import weighted reciprocal tariff is based on. Again, it's looking at the reciprocal tariffs by country. This is released from the first time the reciprocal tariffs were released. So the China tariffs will be a little bit outdated. As Prince mentioned earlier, those are up to 125%. So this is as we think through how to combat some of these impacts to the P&L, looking at where you can reshore or resource your production from different countries, factories in different countries, will really depend on the tariffs that are coming in the door here. So if we go to the next page. So we'll walk through the example or scenario here, right? P&L today, pre-tariffs, well, not today, let's say a couple months ago, pre-tariffs, right? $1 million brand, probably spending around 60% of their revenue on cost of goods sold, producing items from China or other countries, right? Gets you to a gross profit of 400 grand or 40% margin, gross margin. Let's say on average, you're probably spending on paid ads, whether it's with Instagram, Facebook, maybe paid search ads with Google, TikTok, Reddit, all the other channels that you might use. Let's say you're spending another 200K there. R&D, let's say you have some testing or quality control that you're doing on your products. That would be somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 15% of your overall revenue. Let's just call it 9 to keep things simple here. And then you have your general kind of overhead, general and admin, whether that's people on payroll, whether that's rent, etc. Let's call that another 1% or 10K here. So in total, you're looking at, in this scenario, a 10% operating margin business. And if we go to the next page, what you'll see is with the impact of these 41% import weighted tariffs, you have a meaningful increase in your cost of goods sold, right? Now, what that does is that actually reduces pretty much everything on gross profit, on your P&L, down by that much, right? So, a 40% increase on your COGS is a equivalent hit to your gross profit, of course. And if you're looking at, 41% increase, that's almost 250K of your revenue getting stripped out, right? So immediately off the bat, you go from a profitable business to an unprofitable business. So if you go to the next page, you'll see that the impact that these tariffs have in the case that you are sourcing 100% of the products you sell internationally, it's a pretty meaningful hit, right? You're turning your gross profit of 40% margin to something like 15%, right? And so that's a completely earth-shattering blow to how to operate your business. It makes you have to reevaluate how you source. It makes you reevaluate the cost basis you have employed to service and run your business, whether that's on customer acquisition with sales and marketing expenses, whether you have salespeople on your team going and try to sell your product, whether you're spending the majority of your budget on paid ads, or whether you offer promotions or discounts. All of these things are now no longer affording you a profitable state of your business. And so there really needs to be a multi-pronged approach to combating these tariffs. It's pretty serious. And if we go to the next page, we'll talk about how we can kind of dig into some of that. Right. So there are tons of ways to reevaluate the P&L, right? There's ways to combat the COGS. There's ways to reduce sales and marketing. There's ways to reduce R&D. And there's ways to reduce G&A, right? So in a couple slides, we'll kind of dig in a bit further. But if we go to the next page, please. Here we go. Let's see here. Might be a version control. Let me just take a quick look here. Do you guys mind re-sharing the page? I think there might be a slightly old
One
page.
second. I got you.
Quick refresh.
Thank you.
And folks, again, please pile on those Q&A questions that you have. Corey, while this is maybe being pulled up, I can perhaps address one of your questions on the Q&A side. So I think your question was around the duty rate for small parcels. So yes, so from May 2nd to May 31st, so starting in May, there's going to be a flat fee of $100 per item. It's going to apply to parcels coming in from China and Hong Kong. And then starting from June 1st, this will increase to $200 per item. So this is the current guidance for tariffs. And then along with the flat fee, there will also be a duty on the declared value of the parcels as well. So yeah, large parts of high volume, low cost shipments will be definitely targeted. I hope that answers your question.
Cool. Tyler, if we could actually go back one page, that'd be great. Two pages, actually. If we could just go to page 10, please. Or sorry, page 11.
Sorry, guys. Am I going in the right direction at least?
Yeah, maybe go forward to the first page that you see the green, the page title Ways to Combat. So maybe 3 forward more. Yep. Back. Yep, there you go.
This one? Okay.
Awesome. So as we were saying earlier, right, the P&L post tariffs is a very different story. If you just compare the first column of making 100K of operating profit to the third column where you're losing money, all strictly because of this tariff impact, pretty serious situation. Now, as I was alluding to earlier, there's ways to combat, that loss from the tariffs across various points of the P&L. Now, it's going to be hard to fully combat or offset these tariff increases specifically on COGS because there is this base flat 10% tariff that's offered, or that has been levied. And also the majority of countries, once that's paused, is kind of stepped back, most countries will have more than a 10% tariff. And so it's going to be pretty hard to find opportunities to almost fully negate the COGS increases from sourcing products internationally by sourcing elsewhere, right? So you either need to find different products altogether, or like the componentry altogether to try and combat it. But if you're looking to provide the same product, the same components or ingredients, it's going to be pretty hard to save the same amount of money that you just lost on tariffs on that sourcing alone. And as a result, you are afforded an opportunity to look elsewhere on the P&L to get those savings, right? So as you see here on the right, and maybe actually Tyler, if you go one page forward, you'll see that there's, I'd say, five levers we have available on any P&L to really combat tariff impact on the P&L, right? First thing is pricing, right? So what you're seeing in certain instances is brands or companies in general that have impact of the tariffs go and increase their prices across the board on their products and very explicitly state to customers that there is a price increase due to tariffs. It's unfortunate. It's not always the best thing to have to increase prices in the eyes of customers. However, I think because it's so sweeping and broadly affecting across the entire economy, there is general understanding on the consumer side, customer side, that prices will go up a little bit, right? And hopefully, in the e-commerce space, because generally the unit economics of the business model allow for relatively affordable price points for your products, there might still be some margin and room to increase prices a little bit, at least temporarily, right? While there is this uncertainty and most urgent or immediate impact coming from tariffs. So while typically as CFO and in the finance world, you want to kind of avoid price increases to avoid introducing any friction to bringing more sales to the door. I think there is an opportunity here to do so without much impact to demand, just given that it's so well understood on the demand side or customer side as to why they're being levied. On the COGS side, as I was mentioning earlier, it's going to be hard to fully offset the impact of tariffs. But what you can do is reshore from a high tariff or maximum tariff level country to a factory or factories that can produce those products at lower tariff rates, right? So going and instead of manufacturing your product in Vietnam or China, you can reshore or find factories that can produce the same products in Brazil or in Europe, or maybe here in the US as well. And so that's really where there's going to be some opportunities to bring the costs down. Now, there will need to be kind of a very, I'd say, a thorough kind of scenario or sensitivity analysis to say, the cost of raw materials in Brazil will be different from China and Vietnam. And so, it won't always be a one-to-one cost comparison. However, there will be opportunity to earn savings if you're able to, reshore just given the tariff differentials. So, that is something, and we've been consulting certain customers on how to reshore properly, helping them find these factories around the world that can make the products they need, and how to kind of transition in a pretty quick and painless manner. So there is opportunity to bring COGS down. And then elsewhere, I would say is more just broad-based financial analysis and management of the business, maybe with a closer lens, let's call it, where you look at your sales and marketing budget, you look at your R&D spend, you look at your overhead, and just dig a little bit deeper with a fine-tooth comb, right? You use some tools you might have. You might, instead of kind of pushing off your financial reporting to your accounting team or fractional team, it might be worth kind of digging in a little bit further and spending an afternoon, just looking at where all the spend is coming from. Do you need X, Y, Z software tools to run, whether it's marketing or operations or finance or legal, whatever it is, right? Just looking through your P&L kind of expense statements and sheets to see, are there opportunities to get tighter? I think the biggest one we see, particularly in the e-commerce space, is on sales and marketing, where paid advertising and digital marketing is such a large expense and a large driver of growth and revenue. And because of that, there's lots of investment getting put into it. Now, is it all the most efficient? Typically there's room to be slightly tighter on optimizing your different channels, optimizing your campaigns. Maybe it's reevaluating the way that you work with your external agencies who are partnering with you, who might be on a fixed retainer versus a variable retainer, or output kind of relationship or agreement, right? And so ways that we internally at Pietra have been optimizing our sales and marketing expense has really been looking at all of our campaigns that we're running, all of the places that we deploy marketing budget, whether it's on Meta across different product campaigns, whether it's across different geographical campaigns, right? And we basically are tracking once, twice, 3 times a day the budget we're deploying to every single ad that we're running across the internet, right? Some of these are, as soon as one gets to a point of being maybe inefficient, we turn it off, or we reduce the budget, or we try a new piece of content that can be replaced with the existing one to see if that might work out a little bit better and provide more lower CACs per customer close. So we find that typically, because of just the larger nature of the sales and marketing budget relative to other pieces of P&L, we find that there are ways to optimize there. And this could also be looking at channels. Maybe Reddit is a gold mine and you're not spending enough there, and you could actually spend more there. And maybe where you spend most of your money on Meta or Google is actually not where you're getting the most bang for your buck. So it might be a smart move to reduce the spend in the lower ROI or lower kind of LTV channels, and maybe reorient some of that spend to a higher ROI channel, so that you can still get more efficiency in customer acquisition, but your overall budget is going to be lower, and it's, especially on a per customer close basis, you're going to be spending a lot less. I think on the R&D side, albeit a smaller kind of portion of the P&L, there's alternative ways and sequences, let's say, to your R&D cycles. So whether that's on the QC side, whether that's on the production side itself, or testing side even, or design side, instead of maybe sampling 3, 4, or 5 times, there's potentially opportunities to, do a lot more upfront free work, if you will, whether it's designing a product in Pietra, whether it's designing a product, or kind of establishing a plan with ChatGPT, or just internally, even manually kind of doing it as an organization or team before you go in and put any R&D cycles into production. I think that is an opportunity to maybe save a few runs of team time and output, such that you can bring your overall costs down. And then general and admin, in general, I think there's always ways for companies to save money. Personally, I look inwards, and I'm I've got a live Slack tracker of every expense that takes place at this company. I get a notification anytime, Tyler has lunch or when Prince goes and gets a coffee. And I think there's ways for all of us to be doing versions of that. Do we need three different types of software tools? Do we need a subscription for XYZ feature? Do we need to have external consultants for all of these different functions when in reality we only frequently do one or two of them on a recurring basis? So all in all, there are ways to just go and have general financial hygiene that is, I would say, even more critical at this point in time to combat the cost increases that you're seeing from tariffs.
Great.
Awesome.
And so I'm going to ask a follow-up here. Do you have any advice for those on the webinar who are a team of one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think most of what I just went through is addressable or relevant to teams of one or a million or 1,000, right? You have I don't know any teams of a million, but you have pricing, which is a core function of any business. You have your sourcing, location, and production. Where are you trying to find the best optimal path? And again, I think at this point in time, like partnering with a company like Pietra, who sees both sides of the table, demand from brands looking to produce and source products, and factories and suppliers around the world making those products, we have a generally good idea of like where the market is headed, what are some pros and cons of different countries, different suppliers even. And so, I think consulting people like Pietra as part of your membership or even more of a managed service is probably a smart thing to do. But again, that's also something that the one person shop or team can be focusing on as well, and probably already is. Sales and marketing, they probably have an external firm, or maybe they themselves have the skill set or time to run the media buying for the business. And so I think it really does apply to one person or 100.
Great, thanks.
Tyler,
Right.
in the interest of time, do we want to blast through some Q&A?
I think we should do a speed round of Q&A. So I'll give you a minute to close things up if you wanted to share any final words. Otherwise, we can transition to Q&A, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, let me just breeze through two more pages real quick, and then we'll be good to go. So again, just resharing this, I think this is a reciprocal tariff sheet that everybody should just have handy at all times and really try to understand as they're thinking through how to save on COGS, right? What countries can make the things you're trying to build or sell, and what is the expected savings you can anticipate from going from where you are today to there? That's one thing. And then if we go to the next page, the kind of overall view, now kind of following the sequence we were going through earlier, is you have a pre-tariff P&L, right? You're making 100K of operating income, 10% margin on your 1 million of revenue. Tariff impacts you, your COGS increase 25%. Your COGS increase 41%, and your gross profit reduces 25%. Your operating income goes negative, right? Then you combat all that with lists or various changes that you can make on the P&L, right? So as we talked about, revenue can go up, COGS can come down by reshoring, sales and marketing can go down by reducing inefficiency in your different marketing channels and budget. R&D can come down a bit by being more optimal in your batching and R&D cycles. And then finally, looking for any type of general and administrative or overhead waste, right? All can basically, you can find ways to combat the entirety of the effect of that tariff. And on the right, you'll see that your resulting P&L will look the same. Granted, the margin will be slightly lower if you're able to go and increase revenue by a little bit. But again, the dollars that are coming through the door of operating profit should be the same. So, just an illustration to help think through all that. But yeah, why don't we kick it off for Q&A?
Awesome. And let's do a rapid fire round of questions. And I'll just start here at the top. Prince, if you want to take this one. And I believe Graham shared some pretty detailed figures on this last week, if you can remember those. So do brokers have a standard fee? If so, could you share what that is, or does this vary?
Yeah, great question. Brokers typically do have a fee. These fees can vary. It can be anything from $50 per filing up to, $150 per filing. So that's the typical broker fee cost. Again, just depending on who's the import broker you work with, that's what varies the price point. Some brokers that are attached to freight forwarders, let's take, for example, Flexport, will oftentimes not charge anything for the brokerage work in exchange for allowing Flexport to be your freight forwarder or your shipping and logistics partner.
Just going to run down the line here while we
Good.
have the few minutes. So, for garments that we currently have in development in China, do you recommend going and delaying production, or try to find a better country to manufacture the garments?
Yeah, great question. I think ultimately, anonymous attendee, this comes down to what Saul said, which is what is the gross margin you have to play around with? There's a pretty good chance that there won't be as many other countries that can make garments in similar quality standards to what China can. But if 145% increase on your cost of goods sold is just untenable, and if you don't have the gross margin to support it, you might have to find a new factory. There are good cut and sew and stitching factories across other parts of the world, particularly, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. But at scale, China still has the largest cut and sew production capacity in the world.
Very good. And anonymous attendee says been sourcing products from China, and they seem to be getting held up at customs ever since the Trump administration's announcement. What do you do in cases like these? And we have heard just general feedback that there is quite a bit of backup at U.S. Customs and border. So,
Yeah. Totally. So typically, there's a reason why goods would be held up at customs. The current reason might unfortunately be out of your control, and it might be that Customs and Borders just does not have the technology infrastructure needed to be able to. The AMS system is what they use to file customs. Think of it as like their version of TurboTax, and it just might not be up to spec to handle the sudden increase in volume of customs that are needed to be filed. The most important thing for you all to have is please make sure that you're paying all your duties and taxes on imported goods on time. If you don't, or if you have outstanding duties or tariffs, customs may hold your product, subsequent product as a result. Please make sure that you keep all commercial invoices, all bills of lading on you, and make sure that either you or your factory or your freight forwarder has a record. And please make sure that you are classifying your products correctly. And then above all, work with a licensed customs broker to make sure that 1, 2, and 3 are being done.
great. I'm going to bundle Corey's questions here about the $100, $200 charge. So the $102 charge only applies to de minimis China products, correct?
Correct. So the $100 to $200 flat fee applies to small items, so parcel shipments, but it applies actually per item within the shipping box. So for example, if like a small parcel contains 10 items, each item will incur the flat fee, so $100 per item, and then that'll go up to $200 per item starting June 1st, regardless of the total declared value of the parcel. And then the total 145% tariff number, this comes from the baseline 10% on these goods, the reciprocal tariff of the 125% on these goods, including, the 125% stacked reciprocal tariff, and then additional 20% tariffs, which are called the fentanyl-related tariffs, which is what the US is putting on China, particularly focused on this parcel. So the government is pretty keen on shutting down de minimis and putting pretty harsh penalties in place for brands that leverage it.
Okay, a couple of questions about sourcing. One from Melissa, broader macro type questions. Maybe Saul, you can take this one. I'm assuming that this is an attempt to bring manufacturing back to the USA. Is there any way to start building resources for where to find supplies here, or even partially manufacture products ourselves?
Yeah, I would say there's two things. One is there is the impact that you can find international countries that have lower tariff rates than the ones you're currently sourcing from. Now, let's say you're, sourcing from countries, if I were to just pull up the sheet, if you're, pulling from ones, or sorry, sourcing from countries like Brazil, let's say that is already at the minimum 10%, then, you won't have that opportunity to reduce your COGS even further unless you come to the US. Now, the US will obviously be cheaper for relative to all countries internationally. The issue is, the cost of labor, cost of production in the US will be slightly higher. And so understanding, the pros and cons and the actual dollars and cents that it will cost for your product to be made in the US is going to be the name of the game. And that can be done very quickly, right? You can look at you can just get a quote from a US manufacturer of the product you're trying to make, see what it looks like on a order of 1,000 units, 100 units, whatever your MOQ is or whatever your number is, and do a very simple, A versus B comparison. Now, in general, I think based on the overall kind of sentiment and what it seems like in terms of the administration's stance, there seems to be a lot of push towards bringing manufacturing back to the States, right? And that's not just from tariffs. That's going to be, can anticipate other forms of maybe soft or non-quantitative impact that will make it a lot easier to produce domestically. I think in particular, though, using resources like Pietra's supplier marketplace, and also maybe just searching around for others via Google or ChatGPT, can always assist as well with helping you find manufacturers for your products in the US.
Great. Thanks, Saul. And might have time, again, more questions than minutes available today. Question from anonymous attendee, which I can take. How can Pietra guarantee quality of products when sourcing from other countries? Great question. So finding a factory or supplier that's a great match for your brand is one of the most valuable services Pietra offers you. Now, while we're not the ones providing the goods themselves, we provide you a way to directly connect with those factories. And I can offer a couple of tips just from talking to customers every day, people launching companies. Invest in communicating with your brand and make sure you're feeling excited and comfortable about moving forward before making a big production purchase. Recognize that the sampling process is extremely important. And sometimes that does mean going through 2 or 3 rounds of samples before arriving at that perfect product. That's actually part of what the process is about. And keep all of your communications within Pietra, because that'll give our supplier management teams. We have supplier management teams located all over the world, actually, to check in with suppliers and verify that they are capable of what they say they can make. So keeping all those communications in there allows our supplier management team to review anything if that needs to happen. And then lastly, we actually offer shipping assurance and sample assurance on your sample purchases. So just in case anything goes a little bit off the rails there, we have some protections available for you. So.
And I'll add one last thing. You can actually also, when producing goods, run third-party quality control on the production of your goods as they're being manufactured. So especially with shipping costing more than ever, definitely QA your goods so that you don't have inventory that's shipped over that has to then be shipped back to be reworked.
Yes, great addition. And those quality inspections can be booked directly through the platform.
Awesome.
Okay. All right, folks. Do we want to go to the top of the hour? We have about 5 questions left.
Yeah, why don't we just power through and wrap it up?
Great. So will the per item $100 to $200 fee apply to samples?
Yeah, great question. So the answer is, as far as latest guidance, yes. And so this is actually pretty insane, but we will come back to you guys with a bit more detail and information. But per the new de minimis statements, yes, the $100 flat fee applies to all samples and all sub $800 goods. So there was, I think, another question of what can you do if you receive a product with a sample with this duty on it? You can always refuse delivery of the package. It's something that, is maybe crude, but is a real solution. So it's something that's real, that's going to happen. But yes, one of the things that we would recommend everyone do is just communicate with your supplier to see whether or not they can cover the fees, or if there's a way to adjust shipping methods to reduce costs for something like this. Like, let's say, for example, you are trying to white label or private label an existing product. Does the supplier already have inventory domestically in the US that can be fulfilled that they have imported via full container? So, yes, there will be pretty big implications on sampling.
And we'll be sure to keep close eyes on any updates regarding the $100 and $200 fees. Let's see, a couple more questions about the flat fees. I think Prince provided more detail on that today. Circle back with us later this week. We'll be sure to touch on that with additional webinars this week. And then lastly, a question from Ali. This is interesting. Can you help with manufacturers that aren't listed on your platform? For example, I have found different manufacturers.
Great question. So I think, Ali, the question comes down to what exactly would you look to help with? What exactly are you looking for help, with regards to? There's a lot of things that, we at Pietra can do to support you through your manufacturing journey, even if it's not for a manufacturer that's on our network. What I would recommend is actually inviting the manufacturer to join the Pietra network to streamline communications through Pietra, to streamline QC through Pietra, to streamline finances, and paying out your manufacturer through our rails that we've spent the time building. But send us a note or a ping in the chat bubble in the bottom right of our website if there's a specific question you have about how we can help.
Yeah, and I'll just add from a fulfillment perspective, it's if you're a fulfillment customer with us, it's not necessarily required, but a lot of brands we work with will invite their supplier to join our network. It reduces a little bit of repeat operational tasks that you have to complete if the supplier is off platform. But Ali, don't hesitate to follow up with our customer support team. I think I've pitched this at every webinar so far. We can be very easily reached at creators@pietrastudio.com. We actively monitor that email inbox with live agents. And then you can also reach out to the little chat bubble whenever you're logged into the Creator Hub. We actively monitor those chats as well. So, Ali, if you have any follow-ups and you're an existing customer with us, please follow up and we'll get that fully answered for you. And then last question with David, this is the last one I'm going to take today, is, and this is a good clarifying point, I think. David's asking, so essentially it is better to have a $1,000 shipment versus an under $800 one. Does anybody want to work out the math for David on that one?
Yeah, I mean, we can go through the specific math, David, but it ultimately comes down to, what is your objective? If you need to ship I'll phrase it this way. What the US government is trying to do is disincentivize people from shipping high volume of low value parcels from China into the US. And they're actively trying to incentivize and encourage people to consolidate inventory more and then to obviously pay a duty or a tax on that inventory. So, it's not always going to mean that, hey, it makes more sense to ship $1,000, product as opposed to an $800 one. It's just that if you ship under an $800 package on a per item or per order basis within that parcel, there will be a duty applied to that product.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right, always an engaged audience. 24 questions today, folks. Thanks for running through them so quickly. Saul, thanks for your expertise on the finance side. Everybody on, thank you so much for attending, and keep an eye out for updates throughout the week. We'll have additional guests joining us, and we will always be sure to keep you informed of the most recent news and updates. So we'll leave it there today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
That's
everyone.
all.